Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions. I know we just checked this band out last week, but some people really love them, so we get to check them out again. We're looking at some more Xiu Xiu today. The first song being Don Diasco, and the second, I Love the Valley OH, which, when it comes to Xiu Xiu, I don't know how to expect anything from them. I don't think you can expect anything from them. So the best thing to do is just go in with an open mind. Both of these come off of different albums, with this first one coming off of Knife Play, which I think we just... No, I thought we just checked something out from Knife Play, which was from 2002. And the second one comes off of Fabulous Muscles from 2004. So we might see a little bit of an evolution of sound across these two tracks. Let's dive into it and see what they're bringing to the table with Don Diasco.
God! Ladies high! Baby, hearing fall on high! 'Cause my heart all the time is always the same. Nothing happened. 'Cause my best that you shut up. It's always the same. Nothing happened. Mia, jailbird, softy sigh. Mia, who cried secret sigh.
Okay. I'm really impressed by the kitchen pan sounds. They're like perfectly pitched. Like, they're tuned together. It kind of makes me think that they might be digitally created, but I don't know. This just sounds like hitting pots and pans. If they created that, I'm really impressed. Especially for 2002. I think electronic music and digital sounds in general were definitely taking off a bit, but Xiu Xiu's never really been a band that I have thought has had access to cutting edge technology. So actually I think we've seen two live performances of them, and they use a lot of acoustic instruments too. So, well, I say instruments, but things to hit. I mean, I guess if you make music out of it, it's an instrument. So those are probably real things being hit, and it's just perfectly pitched. I wonder how long it took them to find all of that. Anyways, I don't know. I'm just kind of blown away by that percussion line that started the song and ended it. There's really only two things in here that I think abide by more traditional structure. Rhythm, we have a pretty clear 4/4 in here, and harmony. There is a series of synth pads during the loud screaming part, which I think is the chorus, and it gives us 8 different chords. Although I think they're actually just single notes. I think we're getting root tones out of these. But we have a home, up a little bit, up a lot, and then down a little bit, back to the home, below that, below that, below that. And it's just this descent after that. And then we start it back over, and we have the rising idea that peaks up to the top on the third and drops down to the fourth, and then we just continue to descend from there. It's definitely a progression that to me feels like attempting to climb out of a hole only to sink deeper. 1 step forward, 2 steps back style. But those are the only 2 things in the song that I can really make heads or tails of. Everything else is chaotic experimentalness. We talk about his vocals giving us a lead melody through a lot of this. He's out of tune in a lot of it. I don't know if it is just raw dissonance where he is singing notes not in the scale that the synth is playing, or if he's legitimately flat and sharp working on microtonal elements. But his vocals are just, there's a tension in them, constantly rubbing up against every other note in here and making them not feel good about it. That's so wrong. And once we bring in the screaming, I think it gets even worse because there is a second track in there where he harmonizes with himself, and this is definitely not in tune with each other. So these two are both clashing, and then it's also clashing with any of the notes coming out of any of the other instruments in here. And so harmonically, it's a big disaster. In the best way, I mean, it's definitely what they're going for here is a type of atonal harmony, but it's dissonance all over the place on the harmony side. The melody is very difficult to follow. It never quite goes in the rises and falls that I would expect, kind of focusing on functional harmony and where melody tends to go in modern mainstream writing. Definitely marches to the beat of his own drum with his melody writing. And textures, timbres. There's just I mean, we have what I thought, I'm still not 100% sure, but sounds like pots and pans in here. That's how the song starts, with these very non-traditionally used for music timbres. And it just gets more bonkers from there. We have, I think, what is an electric guitar at the beginning, and he's just, I don't know, it sounds like he's punching the strings, all of them together at a very high volume, and it was those big, gritty blasts at the start of the song. We didn't hear them again outside of what I think is the first verse, but yeah, it's just, it's chaotic, it's noisy, it's eccentric, it's Xiu Xiu. It's really tough for me to speak about this in any capacity because, one, there's nothing like it. But two, a lot of it is just unconventional. And a lot of my framework of analysis comes from convention, what things are normally used for, what chord progressions mean harmonically, emotionally. Anytime someone deviates from function, why would they do that? What could that represent? When your entire song is deviation, though, there's no central point to compare anything to. So it's really tough for me to break down Xiu Xiu songs, but I had mentioned something when we checked them out last week or the week prior. I don't remember what it was. It was recent. And I had mentioned that it just sounds like pain. And I wish I could remember the name of this person who commented on that video, and they're like, that's a really good description, because a lot of what the vocalist sings and writes about and makes music about is pain in their life. And they went on to talk about the lyrics as well. And I've always been stumped by their lyrics. But this commenter had mentioned that there probably is a thread of sense in Xiu Xiu's lyrics, but they require personal experience. The metaphors they use, the specific ideas that they bring up, it makes sense to the vocalist. Something about this word salad, but what's word salad to me, makes sense to them. They're drawing conclusions between these. There's strings between all these different ideas, and I'd like to extrapolate that a little bit here. The thing with Xiu Xiu musically is that it's very personal, much like the lyrics are kind of difficult to grasp if you're not the lyricist. I think the music is as well. I get the gist of it. It's a lot of sonic representation of anxiety or tension or pain or sorrow or all these negative things really represented in peak form, showcasing the extremities of this kind of stuff as far as music can showcase it. But sometimes, if you want to get to the meat of it and really understand why specific ideas were used, or why this song is as eclectic as it is. We've listened to some Xiu Xiu songs where I get it, right? There's a groove, there's a format, there's a flow. I pick up on things, and this one's just way out there. It's, in a sense, musical word salad, but it makes total sense to the person who made it. Every choice in here was put there by design for a specific purpose, and just because I don't get it doesn't mean that it's purposeless. And so I think Xiu Xiu is one of those bands that really is for the artist before the consumer, before the audience. Even if this person, I don't remember what his name is, or else I would name him. I've talked about him several times here. He's the heart of Xiu Xiu. The members around him have sort of revolved around a bit. I know I had difficulty putting last week's thumbnail together because it was an older track and it was difficult to find that specific lineup. And I think I couldn't, actually. And I just used a picture of him instead since it's his project. But where was I going with this? I don't remember. Dang it. But yeah, it's his project. Things may. Oh, I was gonna say that even if he didn't have an audience, even if Xiu Xiu wasn't this large of a band, which, I mean, they have 160,000 monthly listeners for something as niche as this. That's a pretty good number. But even if he didn't have this audience, he would still be making this. He would be a bedroom producer. He would have a band camp with, 0 to 1 album purchases per album, because he needs to get this out of his system, and this is the vocabulary he has for expressing himself. And, having an audience it's secondary. It's the icing to the cake, honestly, but it's secondary to everything else. This is very personal art, and it just happens to be in the public eye for people who want to check it out. But it was definitely not made for public consumption first. And I wish I could remember that commenter's name for sort of having that click with me here. I'm going to read some lyrics for Don Diasco, and then we're going to check out the next one, I Love the Valley OH. Alright. The two verses, as usual with Xiu Xiu, don't really make much sense to me. The first one says, "Good God, baby, Ladies high, baby aping full on high. I have no idea. There might be multiple layers to this as well, but I don't know. Verse 2 just says, Mia, jailbird, softy sigh, Mia who cried secret sigh. I've got nothing on that. The chorus, which takes up a majority of the song, says, I cross my heart all the time, it's always the same, nothing happened. I cross my wrist and now you shut up, it's always the same, nothing happened. I think the first part is saying that he, cross my heart is what people say when, I'm not lying, I cross my heart, that kind of thing, right? Swear on my mother's grave and stuff like that. Little things that kids used to say. And so, it says he's making promises here, but nothing changes after he makes these promises. The annotation mentions that he might be making promises he can't keep, and so his life never changes. But I don't necessarily know if that's how I would read that, given how vague it is. I think it's a valid reading. It's just not the one that's obvious to me. The one about crossing my wrists, obviously this is a tweak. First we crossed my heart, now we're going to cross my wrists. But I think it's also an allusion towards suicide. And it says, now you shut up, now you pay attention to this, right? But he also says, regardless of that, nothing happens. Everything stays the same. So there is an annotation on this one that mentions that he might feel his life is too insignificant, that even if he did commit suicide, that nothing would change and the people around him would still be inconsiderate. But again, the lyrics are so vague that I think you could really interpret this in a lot of ways. That maybe this isn't the first time he's crossed his wrists. And so the first time people took notice, they gasped. They stopped talking over him. They shut up, as he states. But now, fourth, fifth, sixth time he might have done it, it's always the same. Nothing ever happens. Either, for me, it's always an attempt and never succession. I never succeed at it, but also people have stopped caring about it altogether. It's just another attempt. But again, I don't think that that's completely supported by the text either. It's just a way of extrapolating a vague idea into something with a little bit more substance to it. So yeah, we have somebody who feels a bit lost in their life. Nothing ever changes no matter what happens. And the verses I have zero read on at all. That's a Xiu Xiu song for you. Although I will say the chorus being a bit more direct like this, despite being vague, it's a big step up. I usually have a real tough time making any sort of conclusions about his lyrics. And here, I got a little bit out of it. Also, the vocalist and main collaborator of this project is Jamie Stewart. Just wanted to clear that up since earlier I had mentioned completely forgetting that name. Alright, let's push forward with track number 2, I Love the Valley OH. I don't know if that's how it's supposed to be said, but there's so much emphasis. You can't see it in there because I use all caps in my font, but O is completely capitalized and everything else is regular capitalized where it's only the first letter. And so it feels like this, in the middle of a sentence, you kind of got surprised. That's what it feels like to me. Anyways, let's dive into this and see where they took their sound and direction and how they might have explored a short format a couple of years later.
It's a pill and you've got to take it. It's a pill that you've got to take. It's a pill and you've got to take it. I won't rest until you take it. It's a heart that you made. It's a heart and the both of you made it.
vocal cracks in this performance that I don't think I've heard before.
It's l'histoire de la famille. It's l'histoire de la femme. It's l'histoire de la family. And I won't rest until I forget about it. I won't rest until I don't care. I won't rest until I forget about it. I won't rest until I don't care. La 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 la.
It's a very traditional structure for Xiu Xiu.
That's a razor, make a million billion threads. That's a razor and you'll make a thread. And I won't rest cause I heard it all before. My behind is a beehive. There's a buzz in my backside. My behind is a beehive. And I won't rest while you break my will. Shoot in the valley. Shoot in the valley. Oh! Shoot in the valley. I am an orphan to the valley. And I won't rest until I forget about it. I won't rest until I don't care. I won't rest until I forget about it. La 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 la.
All the percussion stuff's getting out of sync a little bit. I mean, that was an interesting little melody there at the end, kind of inverted upon itself, as if they play it frontwards one way, and then the second bar or second time through, they flip it around and play it reverse. Not like the audio's reversed, but the notes, the order of them, and maybe even the length of them is reversed. I don't know. I'd have to listen to that again. There was something really off about it. But what I find really interesting is that aside from that moment at the end, this is a very straightforward song relative to Xiu Xiu stuff. We have a core melody here from the vocals, but also from the guitars. It isn't focused entirely on aesthetic of sound, of texture and atmosphere. There is melody and harmony here with the vocal track on top of that, a pretty solid beat behind it. There are some eccentric sounds, some loud, noisy choices throughout, but for the most part, it's got a straightforward structure to it. I don't think I've heard anything from them that is as, on some level, palatable as this. It's kind of scary, actually. What would cause them to make something so palatable like this? Relatively palatable, I'll say. Even that core guitar tone, the one that gives us the that little melody underneath the song, it's got a little bit of grit to it, a little bit of bite, but it's kind of tame. It's in tune. I'd even say that the vocal delivery is a bit in tune, especially compared to Don Diasco. There's a couple of passages in here where he gets a little flat, but overall, the intonation is a lot more in sync through the entirety of the song than something like Don Diasco was, which pretty much had no care for intonation at all. And so I listened to this song and I could probably listen to an album of this. I don't know if I would enjoy it, but almost everything else I've heard from them, I'd be like, okay, this is good in small doses, and I can appreciate what they're doing, but it's not for me. I'm not the target audience of their work. I listen to this, though, and I'm kind of like, Okay, I could probably do this. You know, if I got an album review request for Xiu Xiu, I would definitely want something more like this than like Don Diasco. I even heard some stuff I kind of liked in it. The vocals, parts of them reminded me of some early Gerard Way. If you remember, or if you've ever heard some of the early My Chemical Romance demos, or even some of that rougher vocal stuff we had off of their debut album, I can kind of hear some of that in here. The song kind of works for me. Um, but it's not without its odd choices either. We do have these really big explosive drums coming in here. I don't know what they are. It sounds like a steel drum, like a big bass drum, like a symphonic bass drum, but with like a steel drum body instead of wood, and maybe like pieces of metal sheared off on the side, so when you hit it the vibrations cause them to shimmer, and then that was also put through like a compression overdrive or something. I don't know. It's a massive tone though, and it just comes in. It's like a bunch of feet stomping. It's wild. We had the drumstick stuff at the end where I think it was on some sort of echo, and the echo was not perfectly rhythmically in sync with everything, so it ended up creating this bit of white noise almost. It obscured the core rhythm of the song. That was kind of wild. I did mention that in places the vocalist does dip into some stuff that's not quite in tune, um, but you know, overall, this is a verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus with a palatable beat underneath and a core guitar lick that makes sense. It almost feels like an indie rock song with a little bit of noise, more so than their experimental noise music that they make. It's just, it completely caught me off guard. There is one thing I do want to bring up, though. Something that I mentioned was he has these vocal cracks right up to the point where his chest voice becomes head voice, and there's that little area in there where your voice kind of cracks. It clips into your head voice. I don't know a better way to word that. And he leans into it at times. He'll sit right at that awkward area of his voice, allowing it to be very uncontrolled and wavering. And he'll just do entire passages with it, and it feels very raw because of that. Everything else, I think, is a type of controlled pain that I've heard from him, but this doesn't. This almost feels like he went in with his lyrics in hand and no idea of how he was going to perform it, and then just let his emotions come through the performance in a way that, again, is just less controlled. It's more improvisational. It feels like a performance that can really only be captured once. We also have that very visceral scream that was given extra distortion through overdrive, but still, I don't think I've heard him scream like that before. And despite the palatability of the music here, what's written on paper certainly makes a lot more sense to me than usual. The vocal performance ends up feeling more pained than anything else I've ever heard from them. It worries me about checking out the lyrics. I get this feeling that while this is one of the more palatable musical songs, it's one of the heavier lyrical ones, because that just seems like the type of thing that they would do, right? Does that make sense to anybody else? Um, is there anything else I want to bring up here? I don't think so. This was rather straightforward. I really appreciate that from them. It wasn't anything that I would confuse for another band. It was still distinctly Xiu Xiu. But it was just a different foundation. Like I said, more of indie rock than experimental noise. And just having that different foundation, it appealed to me a little more. Let me check out some lyrics on this, and then we'll wrap this video up. Alright, and lyrically, I don't know that I would have made much sense about this if not for the fact that every single line is annotated, so shout out to the people who put these interpretations up on genius.com. Verse 1, Let me start out with this. There's a lot of repetition to this. For instance, verse 1, it starts off, it's a pill and you've got to take it. It's a pill that you've got to take. Small little variation there. And then a return to form. It's a pill and you've got to take it. And then the turn. I won't rest until you take it. That's how every single 4-line grouping is comprised of. The second one says there's a heart that you made. There's a heart and the both of you made it. There's a heart that you made. I won't rest until I break it. Finally, with some broken French, he says this is the history of the family. So, it's a pill and you have to take it. There's a heart that you made and I'm going to break it. It's the history of the family. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, I'll be honest. The annotations, though, talk about how actually, one was based off of a commentary from Jamie, who mentioned that this was in reference to his father telling him to take his antidepressants, which Jamie ignored on the basis that his dad was a junkie. There's some real irony there. Granted, the drug use is a little different here. One's prescribed by a doctor and one's recreational, but yeah, to have somebody who uses drugs tell you that you have to take your drugs and you see what it does to them, I can see how that can mess you up as a kid. That can certainly instill some interesting headstrong things against doing this. The idea that both of you made a heart and I want to break it says that it could be about his family. His parents came together and made a family. They made this heart, and he wants to tear it apart, presumably because of what the family has done to him. Although I don't know enough about his backstory to talk too much about that, but pretty much every annotation has said that that's the direction of the song. Verse 2 says that's a razor, and you make a billion threats. This would be, according to the annotation, about a person threatening to kill themselves over and over and over again, but it just always being a threat. Next one says that my behind is a beehive, and I won't rest while you break my will. Says that this could refer to the singer's bisexuality and sexual experimentation and the way that his family treated him because of that. And then finally, we get some more broken French that translates poorly to I love you, the valley, which apparently he grew up in some city with valley in it. And then he says, I'm an orphan of the valley. The chorus simply says, I won't rest until I forget about it, until I don't care. La 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 la. Almost as if all of this pain and heartache of his past is something he just wants to stop worrying about, for it not to take up so much of his mind and thoughts. And so maybe he does some stuff. I don't know. Maybe he abuses alcohol or plays music, whatever he needs to do to get his mind off of this stuff, to get it out of his system to where he doesn't care about it anymore. And he is not above just sticking his fingers in his ears and saying la 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 la, just trying to ignore it. There's so much pain and he can't stop thinking about it. And if this is autobiographical in any way, as the annotation suggests it is, it makes a lot of sense for the type of pain in his music, in his art, to be wanting to get this out of his system. And this is the only way he can do it healthily. Yeah, those lyrics didn't really make a lot of sense to me. But having read the annotations and understanding a possible reading of it, it's definitely one of the heavier Xiu Xiu songs that we've listened to lyrically. And I was kind of afraid of that. It's not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be, given how lighter and palatable-ish the music was. But yeah, it definitely lightened the music up a little bit to pave way for these heavy-hitting lyrics. So I find that interesting. Two very different takes on music, both of them filled with pain and sorrow and anger and a lot of negativity, both created primarily with rock instruments and electronic instruments and a lot of noise, but one being quite a bit more experimental than the other, while both exploring some pretty heavy topics. Those are my thoughts on Xiu Xiu's Don Diasco and I Love the Valley OH. Let me know what you thought. Is there anything in here that you want to expand on what I said? Correct me on? Maybe you heard something I didn't talk about at all and you want to expand on the conversation. Put all that stuff down in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for this one. We do have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of short songs. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.